guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Chelsea and this is a little bit of a different video from my normal. If you guys have been following me, I documented basically my entire week by week of my pregnancy and then did a baby announcement. Our little girl Everly was born on July 3rd of this year. But this video I actually have been wanting to shoot basically since she was born. It's kind of a all about my C-section experience video. You know, it's so funny coming into this pregnancy. I had said from the beginning that I wanted to have a natural birth. And so when I ended up having to have a C-section, it was quite contrary to, you know, what my plan was. And I hadn't done hardly any reading or research about C-sections because, you know, I'm 30 years old, completely healthy. This is my first pregnancy. It was a very healthy pregnancy. And although I knew that there's always a chance that you could, you know, end up with a C-section, I just thought it wasn't going to happen to me. So I thought I'd shoot this video for anyone out there who is pregnant. I think it's going to give you hopefully a lot of very real life information of what a C-section actually entails and how the whole process goes. But, you know, also someone who is planning a C-section or has to have a planned C-section for some reason, just a little bit more of like a play-by-play of my experience. So I am going to reference my notes because there's a lot. So bear with me, hang in there. I hope that you guys will find this helpful. Little bit of backstory on myself and why I had to have a C-section. My daughter Everly, like I said, was born on July 3rd. And she came a little bit early. I was 37 weeks and 3 days, so basically 37 weeks pregnant. And she was breech. So when I went in for my 36-week ultrasound and appointment with my doctor, the baby was breech. And so between 36 weeks and 37 weeks, I tried like hell to get her to turn. I did a Webster technique method to get like with a chiropractor to try to open up my hips. I did a lot of like inversion. And when I went in at 37 weeks, my sweet little girl still had not turned. She was breech. And so usually when you have a breech baby, they schedule you for a C-section at 39 weeks. Well, they were checking my amniotic fluid at that 37-week appointment and found that my amniotic fluid was pretty low. I'm not totally familiar with the whole thing, but I guess 5 or above is normal, pretty good at that stage or that far along. And I was at like a 3.5, and so the fluid was getting low. So this was on July 2nd. It was on July 2nd. So on July 2nd, they found out that my fluid was kind of low, and so instead of planning a C-section at 39 weeks, the doctor was planning it for that week. And so my husband and I initially said July 5th, we'll schedule it, we'll go in, and we'll have the C-section. And on July 3rd in the morning, my doctor called me and said, Chelsea, your fluid was low. I don't really feel comfortable waiting. I keep thinking about this. There's just, you know, the baby could sit on her umbilical cord. There's just no real benefit to keeping her in any longer. We need to have the C-section today. So do you want to come in at 12 or do you want to come in at 5:30? So although my C-section was planned, it went from, you know, I have 3 or 4 more days, let me just prepare and get my house in order and everything, to, okay, we're going to do this today. So I am super grateful that I knew I was going to have a C-section. I think it's harder for moms that have to go through labor. I have several friends who had to go through a full labor and either didn't dilate or didn't progress and the baby wasn't dropping and ended up in a C-section. So I think that is a little bit harder, but because I had been planning for a natural birth, I had been speaking to a doula and was kind of in the process of hiring her for my labor when I found out that I needed a C-section. But you know, she said something to me that really stuck, and if you hear anything else from this video, I don't know, I think this was like really nice, especially for me wanting to have a natural birth. I had gone to 5 classes and done nothing but research. I mean, every morning I was watching hypnobirthing and how to manage pain naturally, and my husband was involved. I mean, there was so much that I was doing for this natural, beautiful birth that I thought I was going to have. And so when I told the doula that I had to have a C-section, she told me to take a few minutes to really mourn that loss, because it is a surgery and it is a loss. You know, you kind of lose the birth experience that you thought you were going to have. And mind you, for me, I fully believe that however you need to bring your child into this world is birth. So, you know, this is not anti-surgery at all. It's like you do what you need to do for mom and baby to be safe, and that is it. But because, you know, I had my heart set on this natural birth, I did take some time to mourn it. So the day that my doctor told me I needed a C-section, that night I really broke down in tears and just cried with my husband, and he cried, and it was really sweet. But it gave me a chance to feel that loss, if you will, and then move forward. So I felt it, and then I moved forward, and I felt like I could go into it with a much clearer head. I didn't have any regrets, or, you know, you have fears, but I just felt better about it. So I do think that if that's something that you do have to have, and it's maybe your first time, maybe taking that time to just mourn it was really nice. It helped me a lot. So I wanted to share that with you guys. So we talked about kind of timeline. You know, this all happened. My doctor called me again on July 3rd and said, it's time to have the baby today. We got to go. So he called me at 7 a.m. I had already eaten breakfast, so I couldn't do the 12:30 surgery. I had to do the 5:30 surgery. So he told me, okay, no food or drink after 8 a.m. So I went down and like ate as much more as I could fit and chugged like a monster amount of water, because I knew I was going to go all day without any food or water. So I checked into the hospital at about 3 o'clock, and by 3 o'clock I was pretty hungry. I mean, you're 37 weeks pregnant, all you want to do is eat. At least that was me. So I was getting kind of hangry and just feeling run down to begin with. But we checked in at 3, and the procedure is scheduled for 5:30. So once I think they didn't even call me back until about 4:30. So they had me there way earlier, which was okay. I mean, I'm kind of a planner, so I wanted to be there, just there. But it was me and my husband, and then my father-in-law and mother-in-law were there too. So the first part of the C-section was bringing me into the pre-op room, which the pre-op room was a decent-sized room. They had me completely dressed down. I mean, no panties, no bra, not even I thought maybe I'd get like surgical panties or something. No, it was completely naked except for my surgical gown. And there were 2 nurses in the pre-op room that were, you know, I had to have an IV put in. They put the IV for me. It was like on my wrist. So I had an IV put in, which was pretty thick and big. Not fun. And they were checking my vitals and my O2. And then the anesthesiologist came in, and I had to have a spinal, not an epidural, which I guess the epidural is more common if you've been laboring already. But because this was a planned C-section, they said I was getting a spinal. So he went over just kind of the process, which was nice, but also kind of I don't know if I want to know all this. And then they give you about 15 forms to sign, you know, liability forms. It's like you're signing your life away, literally. So that was a little bit unnerving. But nevertheless, I signed all my forms. My surgeon came in, and he was one of the doctors that I had met before. My practice has several surgeons, so I had met with him prior. And he came in and just told me, hey, and we're ready to go, and you're going to meet your baby today. And that's what I kept holding on to, is this is just a means to get to my baby. So my husband was able to go back with me also, which was really nice. They had him in like the complete OR, like astronaut looking suit with his little scrub hat. And you have to wear, as a patient, you have to wear your scrub hat as well. So the operating room, they wheeled me into the operating room, and I didn't realize this, but Jeff, my husband, had to stay outside for the spinal, so he wasn't able to come in, but he actually was sitting outside of the operating room talking to the doctor beforehand, which was kind of nice, I think, for him, because he got to speak with the surgeon, and it just made it a lot more personal. But they wheeled me into the operating room, which was huge. I hadn't really thought through this part, but I mean, you think big, white, cold, sterile room, freezing cold, and there's probably about 6 people in the room between the anesthesiologist and his tech, the nurses and assistants and whoever else. And then there's like the baby station where they'll get the baby out and kind of get her monitored and everything. And then there was the OR table, which that table was small. I mean, I am not a big person, and it was small for me. So I was like, is this like a one size fits all? Because it was like a little skinny, long, tiny table and then one arm out. So for the spinal, it's kind of weird because they get you over to the table, and you have to, if you think the table is going long ways, you have to sit on the side with your feet over, and they have you hunch like a cat is how they explain it. And they prepped my back and put whatever steri over that, and then had to do the spinal injection, which after it was happening, or while it was happening, I realized that the anesthesiologist was not doing my spinal. It was his, like, he was probably a resident or someone in his, like, last term. Like, he was still a student. So I would recommend to ask before, just because, I mean, the guy was super sweet, but he got my spinal in, and it was feeling very strange, like uncomfortable on one side, and it made me jump, which is terrifying because you have a needle in your spine. So he had to re-inject that. So whatever, that happened. Everything started to go numb, so then they put me back on the table and they lay you back. And they told me that this could happen, which it did in my case. The anesthesia kind of is supposed to go from here down, but as they lay you down, sometimes it can migrate up a little bit, and it did in my case. So I felt very heavy in my lungs, like it felt like I was struggling to breathe, but I wasn't. I mean, they're monitoring your oxygen. They told me it's just that numbness makes you feel like it's a little bit harder to breathe. So that was kind of weird. That was also, the other thing that was kind of weird was the curtain. You know, I've seen a million pictures of people who've had C-sections. That curtain is close. I mean, it's like right here. I thought for some reason it'd be like here or up or further. I don't know. It just felt really close. So they have a big curtain up. You don't see anything. And then in my hospital, they have a big television screen above you, which you can choose whatever scenery you want to look at. So they had like mountain views on for me. And then my husband was brought into the room. And so he was brought into the room apparently as they were like starting to cut. So Jeff is super squeamish, does not like blood, that's not his thing. So he said it was a little bit traumatizing. But he stays, again, you know, forward with me. We're all above the curtain. And the procedure itself to get the baby out was maybe about 5 to 7 minutes. It was pretty quick. You know, I didn't feel a thing. I mean, I'm talking, I thought I'd feel tugging or pressure or some sort of sensation. It was like I didn't have the lower half of my body with the spinal, which was kind of nice. Once they got Everly out, it was so sweet because I could hear her crying, which obviously made me cry immediately. And it was really nice because that screen that was in front of me, instead of having the mountain views, as soon as they got Everly out and brought her to like her table where they had to clean her and prep her and get the water out of her lungs, which with a C-section, they have to do more suctioning for the baby because the birth canal is usually what pushes out a lot of the fluid in their lungs. So I didn't have the option to take her out and put her straight on me. They did have to take her out and like get her cleaned up and everything. And, but it was nice because even though I couldn't see over there, that screen, there was like a camera right above her little station. So I could see her immediately, which was wonderful. So I was able to watch them as they were getting her cleaned up and everything. And Jeff was able to go over there and get a couple of pictures and be with her, you know, right at birth. And then it was probably 10 minutes at the most between that and then them putting her on my chest for skin to skin. So I was still on the operating table in the OR when they put her on me skin to skin. And then they basically sewed me up and got everything put together, which took probably about 45 minutes. In that process, as they were doing all of that, I think my blood pressure went low and I started to like feel like I was going to throw up or dry heave, which was awful. I kept thinking, please don't screw up my stitches because I was, you know, getting super nauseous. But that took about 45 minutes. And then after I was all cleaned up and sewed back up, they brought me to the post-op recovery room, which was the same as the pre-op room. And my friends were able to come in, my family was able to come in, and at that post-op room, they monitor you for about 2 hours. At least that's my hospital's protocol. So they had me monitoring. It was really nice because a lactation consultant came in right away, and she helped me. I had done a million breastfeeding classes too, but she helped me make sure my latch was good and gave me a nipple shield, which I swear by. It was the best thing ever. It saved my nipples, and my baby was only 5 pounds 9 ounces, so I think because she was so tiny, it really helped her latch on. But we had a great experience with breastfeeding, and that initiated right away in the post-op room. The other thing, which I don't know if you guys will have this option, but they asked me if I wanted to see my placenta, which I did for whatever weird reason, and it was just strange. It looked like just a bucket of dark blob. Moving on. What else? Oh, okay, so I did have more vomiting because of my low blood pressure. So as they were wheeling me after my 2 hours in the post-op, they were taking me upstairs to my actual room that I was going to be in. And I had to stop twice and just dry heave. It was nothing coming out, but maybe a little bit of water. But yeah, the vomiting was not fun. And I was also totally numb for like 2.5 hours. So after the C-section, which I think is standard with pregnancy, natural birth or not, but the nurse had to come in and do a fundal exam on me to check if my uterus had been contracting and shrinking down, which mine contracted really quickly and went down really quickly. They said they wanted it 2 fingers below the belly button within 2 days or 24 hours maybe, and mine was like that pretty much right away, which was nice. One thing about having a C-section, you can't really get out of bed for the first 12 hours. So they had to bring Everly to me. I mean, she was with me most of the time, but like if we put her down to nap and then she was back up to feed, my husband had to get up and bring her to me. And I was not allowed to walk for 12 hours, and I did have a catheter in. The catheter was probably the worst part, in my opinion. You know, at 12 hours, I was able to get up. I went to the bathroom. Well, I went into the bathroom, and the nurse had to take the catheter out, which was a very strange, awful experience. I mean, it wasn't painful. It just was really, like, uncomfortable. You know that feeling where you have a UTI or, like, you really have to pee? It feels like that. At least it did to me. But I was able to pee right away, so they didn't have to put the catheter back in. Apparently, if you do not pee within 6 hours of having it removed, they have to put it back in. So keep that in mind. I was able to shower after about 15 hours, which was really nice. I did need the nurse's help, and because I still had my IV in, you have to wear like a crazy glove and all that to keep it from getting wet. I did not need serious pain medication. I just took Motrin. They offered me Percocet, and I took one, I think, on the second day just because the pain was pretty bad. But other than that, it was like Motrin every 4 hours or 6 hours? 4 hours, I think. And one thing that I think was really helpful was they gave me an abdominal binder. It's like a belly band. And I work in a surgery center, so I had several of those packed already because I wanted to use it after. But I highly recommend, if you're going to have a C-section, to ask them for extra belly bands. That, for me, was absolutely awesome because it made me feel like I was put back together quicker, and it supported me, and it supported that C-section scar. So I lived in my belly band. Today is August 26th, so I am almost 8 weeks postpartum now, and I am still wearing a belly band, and I have worn one 24/7 since my surgery. I think there's a cosmetic element of it, but for me it was cosmetic, but it was also just made me feel better. And one other thing I wanted to mention is we live in a townhouse, so I do have stairs. So if you're planning to have a C-section, one thing that helped me a lot was I had a complete setup downstairs and a complete setup upstairs. So I was only allowed to go up and down the steps twice in a day, which I probably did more than that against the doctor's advice. But I do think that that helps to have two different stations, because downstairs we had a full diaper changing station with wipes and diaper rash cream, and I had my pack and play downstairs that had a changing table on it, so I was able to change her. And my boppy, I had a downstairs boppy and an upstairs boppy. I had nipple shields downstairs and upstairs water, all of those things. And if you are planning to have a C-section, if you can have help, you will need help. It is hard. I mean, my husband was an angel, and my in-laws were bringing us food every day for the first 2 weeks, but he really, like, whatever I needed. I mean, he brought me breakfast, in bed, so I could stay upstairs and nurse and feed. And I usually didn't even make it downstairs until about 1 o'clock in the afternoon for the first week. But it was just nice to be able to take it easy and have someone help. Now that I'm 8 weeks postpartum, I feel pretty great. I mean, at 6 weeks, I was cleared to go back to exercise. I should mention this C-section area my C-section scar is maybe this big. It's very small, but my numbness is about that big, on my lower, like from my hip bones down. And so that numbness may or may not come back. Once you've had surgery and those nerves are cut, you may or may not regain sensation. I felt a lot of burning and stinging pain. Sorry, my dryer is going off. Burning and stinging pain in that area. And that was not fun. But that lasted for up to 6 weeks, and that belly band did help me. I did use a scar cream. I'm using something called biocornium on the incision. It's still pretty pink, but it's getting better. And from 6 weeks on, I have been exercising. One thing that I did that I think really helped is my office does a treatment called Venus Freeze or Venus Legacy, and it's basically a radio frequency treatment. My doctor cleared me to do it at 6 weeks, and that heat and radio frequency, that energy really helped to break up the scar tissue that was over my C-section. I think when you have a first-time C-section, there's a lot of scar tissue because they cut through so many layers, and so it was very thick and dense and hard. And I have seen a huge improvement. I've just done 2 treatments so far, but I'm going to keep doing those for a little bit longer to help with the healing. And I think that is about it. I think that's it. I hope I didn't babble too long. I hope that you found this video helpful. If you did, give it a thumbs up. And I have a couple more videos on the horizon. I will be trying to film more often now that Miss Everly is eating a little bit more regularly and sleeping a little bit longer through the night. But if you are having a C-section, I pray that you have a wonderful, wonderful experience. Do not listen to those horror stories. I think positive mindset is everything, so focus on the good. And I'll check out you guys next time. Thanks for watching. I'll see you soon. Bye.